Hi, this is Ren,
This is Casey.
and this is All Walks of Film.
I told Ren that he has to see 16 Candles because he's never seen it before, and based on all of what it looks like, I don't blame him. But it was one of those ones where it's like, no, you kind of have to see the movie to believe that it exists.
Yeah, and it was one of those movies, let's face it, I am not a huge, romantic comedy, though I really wouldn't call this a romantic comedy film,
No.
really at all, but, that's kind of what it marketed itself as, almost.
Oh yeah, that's definitely what it looks like. All the pink and hand-drawn hearts and Mullen
Yeah.
Ringwald and all that stuff, yeah.
And I get that it's trying to pull on, the John Hughes, Pretty in Pink, and all that kind of stuff. Which one came out first? Was it Pretty in Pink or
I
don't
believe
know.
16 Candles came out before Pretty in Pink, but I'm not really sure.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know this information offhand, so I apologize for that. I could probably look it up, but yeah.
So now that you've seen the movie, with essentially not really knowing a lot of the,
Oh, this came out before. Yeah.
you didn't, know much about the movie beforehand. So what do you think now that you've seen it?
This movie is fucked up. I used to joke with people about hey, I'm not one to complain about misogyny in movies. I'm not one to complain about a lot of kind of stuff because usually I can kind of separate myself from the films because either A, they're trying to, show, hey, this is, a fucked up situation and kind of explore that a little bit, or they're trying to be transgressive and that is funny. But this movie tries to play everything off like it's cute, which makes it more disturbing than, anything that Todd Solondz has done, which I was not expecting from this movie. I mean, I knew about the long duck dong thing, but that really isn't the offensive thing about this movie.
Although, yes, that is plenty offensive, but
Yeah,
he at least has some redeemable parts to his character, watching him run around with his girlfriend is pretty entertaining. Not even because, oh, it's so unlikely that, an Asian dude would get with an American girl. It's more of just, it's fun watching them, run around in cars and work out together and just be, really bizarrely and openly sexual with one another.
yeah,
But then
and-
you had to have a gong played literally every time he makes an appearance. You have to make fun of his name. You can't figure out whether he's Chinese or Japanese. He gets called a Chinaman. He literally uses a fork and spoon like a pair of chopsticks.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because, I mean, not in a good way, but it's kind of funny that they don't know what Asian he is.
Because they just throw all the stereotypes into one pot and go that's him.
Yeah, because the way he was talking, it was oh, okay, he kind of sounds like Japanese.
Because the actor is Japanese.
Yeah, but it sounds like...
But they keep calling him a Chinaman, and they call him Long Duck Dong, which is clearly making fun of Chinese names. But then he wears a Japanese style robe and says bonsai. Pick an offensive stereotype and stick with it. Come on, dude.
Yeah, and it's so weird because I'm not... I was not expecting the movie to be this, really at all. I had heard some things about the movie. I had heard some date rapey stuff about the movie, but I didn't really know the context. And I was oh, okay, well, it might have been they were drunk and all this kind of stuff. But no, this is clearly, well, it's confusing because we see the situation before, and then they try to play it off like Anthony Michael Hall was drunk, with her.
He
because
clearly wasn't.
Yeah, it's... I mean, I get that, different people are different drunks, but, we saw Long Duck Dong, climbing up a tree and, passing out and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
He's clearly fucking out of his mind.
Well, besides the fact that we know that Anthony and Michael Hall didn't have anything to drink at the party, because he was trapped under that coffee table. We saw him have one small drink with Jake, but then we also saw him trying to drive home, and he clearly was fine.
Yeah.
and not incapacitated, and he also had enough sense to put on his headgear while he was sleeping. Like, he clearly intended to go to sleep with, her in the car out in the open in a parking lot.
Yeah, and let's get into that whole, like, situation, because, like, part of me was, like, rejecting what I was watching while I was watching it, just because, like, it's so ridiculous that, like, part of you, like, brushes it over, and I get that a lot of people probably watch this movie that way, where they don't, like, really think about the repercussions or, the seriousness or, like, how fucked up it is, like...
But it's not even a situation where you have to think about it for a second to realize how fucked up it is, because, like, this scenario lends itself to sort of flowing naturally or to being funny for some reason or being, like, making sense for the characters. It was just so blatantly, like, wrong and Steubenville-y and just awful.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, Anthony Michael Hall, who's just named Geek in the credits... Like, he's really, really creepy. And then, like, there's some parts where it's just like, oh, this is genuine, he's awkward, and I get that he's trying to have, like, a front and all that kind of stuff. But, like, anytime I get to those moments, he ramps it up to 11 and, like, goes way too far. And it's like, dude, back the fuck off. What the hell? And it distracted me from, like, actually, like, appreciating the movie. And I get that, like,
if the movie was trying to criticize that sort of thing, that would be one thing, but the movie is rewarding that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Jake, though? Because Jake is so much fucking worse.
Oh, God, yes, he is.
Jake is a garbage human being, and for some reason we're supposed to be like, oh, he and Molly Ringwald should get together. They'd be so cute because he's so dreamy. All he does is not pay attention to his girlfriend, daydream about dating other women, getting bored, shoving the door in her face while she's incapacitated and drunk, and he is completely sober, trying to call up another girl, not even noticing when she needs help because her hair is stuck in the fucking door. And you have to intentionally not give a shit to not know that that's going on when there's literally an entire party trying to handle the situation outside.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's one thing, like, at the very beginning where she, like, bangs the door, and, like, that's barely a bang, so I get that he wouldn't be able to hear that. But, like, to have the entire party, like, outside of the door trying to get her out, like, you think at least one person would, like, bang on the door and be like, hey, open it up, or try to open the door, because, like, we don't even see that.
Yeah.
Which I get to a certain extent, like, the girls that cut her hair are doing that to fuck with her because they hate her because, she's the hottest girl in school and
they're trying to make her look hideous, yeah.
So, like, I get that, and from another movie, I would be able to appreciate the, transgressiveness of the movie. I mean, like I said before, I really like Todd Solondz films, but this movie is so much more fucked up than a Todd Solondz film.
Well, yeah,
and Todd Solondz has child rape in Happiness.
Yeah, but it's also not glorifying child rape.
Exactly, but this movie glorifies date rape.
Yeah, because, okay, as if it wasn't already bad enough that the geek, got his whole group of kids together to pay $1 to see Molly Ringwald's underwear, which I think is probably the most famous part of the movie for some reason. You have that, but it's clearly coming from, like, the despicable character that we're not supposed to like, and it's supposed to be, like, a shitty thing he's doing.
Yeah,
like,
it's
when you thought he was gonna be nice, and then he turns around and he does something fucked up,
Yeah, like, in the American Pie movies, Stifler does a lot of bad stuff, but, like, the movie never tries to pitch Stifler as a good character. He's always the character that you're supposed to make fun of because of the fucked up shit that he's doing.
Right, like, it's kind of the Chasing Amy thing with the whole, like, oh, she's gay, all she needs is a good dicking, and it's like, but it's coming from that dude. The idiot who you're supposed to fucking hate. But Jake is supposed to be, like, the good guy that you want Molly Ringwald to get together with. And while he's completely sober, completely having an unhealthy relationship with his girlfriend and chasing after some other tail, talking about how, oh, my girlfriend is passed out cold in my room. I could violate her 10 different ways if I wanted to. And that's literally what he says. He doesn't say, like, oh, my girlfriend is really hot and she's upstairs and we could have sex if I wanted to have sex with her. No, he says she's incapacitated and I would violate her. Like that. Then he says, hey, I will trade you a pair of women's underwear for my girlfriend. Just take her. She's passed out cold. You can take her. It's fine. You get to take her home. Because she's passed out drunk and incapacitated. And even though I know she would never want to be with you, she doesn't have a say in this because she doesn't have free will. Because she's drunk.
Yeah, and then it gets even more fucked up because he's like, he's me. Like, yeah, when they're driving.
He's fucking with her because she's out of it. But then also when the geek is like trying to take some responsibility and saying like, I don't have a car. I don't have a license. I can't drive. He's like, it's fine. Take my incapacitated girlfriend home, you stranger that I barely know who literally cannot drive.
Yeah, this movie is so kinds of fucked up. And, like, knowing that this movie is, like, one of the tent poles of, like, 80s movies, and I'm, like, watching the movie going, like, okay, like, I love The Breakfast Club. Like, it's one of my... Too. It's one of my favorite, like, teen dramas that I've ever seen. And
it has some fucked up stuff, like the makeover scene is really shitty, but...
But that's the fucking nothing.
That's a small part, and it's not that big a deal in comparison. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that it's fucked up, but, like, it's not this movie.
I also want to know why there hasn't been a movie about Emilio Estevez being an X-Men for that one scene where he screams in the glass shatters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but coming back to...
Yeah, so then after that, she wakes up after they had sex where he had to have been sober and she had to have been not sober and out of it. She's like,
and then they, like, retroactively try to correct that.
Yeah, like, oh, he was drunk too and he doesn't remember. And she's like, I think we had sex and, it's really nice of you to ask if I enjoyed being date raped by you. That makes me think that you're really cute. I'm sure I must have enjoyed it. We can get together now. It's fine. And then Jake comes up to her and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm kind of sorry that, like, this happened to you. She's like, oh, it wasn't that terrible. I only was passed around like a piece of meat, scalped, given over to another dude who...
Scalped.
Yeah, she was.
She had part of her hair cut.
Yeah. And then handed back to her like a fucking trophy.
Okay, I get what you're... Okay.
Yeah. I was given over to a man who couldn't drive, who left me out in a parking lot after he showed me off to all of his friends while I was incapacitated, and then fucked me. It wasn't that terrible. And then all he had of that to get... is supposed to leave Jake available for Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, and, like, part of me thought the movie would at least get into the fucked up nature of, hey, we're going to take photographs of, like, this happening. But, like, there's only one picture, and she's not even in the picture. So, right. Like, it's like... Because part of me was thinking, like, oh, well, you could look back at this movie and be like, oh, look at all this incriminating evidence of this person clearly violating an incapacitated woman.
Right.
Girl, whatever. Yeah, so, oh my God.
And then the geek is rewarded for all of his shitty behavior by hooking up with the hottest chick in school who now wants to be his girlfriend. And then Jake gets let off the leash for, looking around at other women behind his girlfriend's back and doing all this shit to her that clearly was facilitating date rape. So he can go and be such a good boyfriend to Molly Ringwald.
And I hear all this stuff about people complaining about The Breakfast Club and, oh, Bender's language and, like, how he talks and, like, oh, he's sexually harassing Molly Ringwald. And it's like... Yeah, there are a couple scenes like that where, like, he puts his head in between her legs and shit like that. And, to be perfectly honest, he's like a fucking saint compared to practically any guy in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like there's so much of the humor of the movie is based around not helping women who are incapacitated. Like, it's disturbing. Like, you kind of have that a little bit with Long Duck Dong, where, like, they report him missing and somehow didn't know that he was on their front lawn, and they were still gonna go to this wedding, even though, like, they don't even know if he's dead or alive. Like, that's just, like, complete disregard for him. But everything with, like, the sister being on muscle relaxers and being really out of it and not being able to walk on her own, and why would you allow her to get married like that?
Yeah, like why
are you helping her?
Well,
come on.
That seems to be like a theme throughout the movie of like people like you said, people constantly not helping women when they're clearly incapacitated and they need help.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be funny. Not like a moral lesson or anything like that. And like
it's one of those things where, like, you know, to a certain extent, you know, it is funny, but then they take the joke too far every single time. Because, like, seeing her, like, walk down and, like, stumble around and stuff like that, like, you laugh for a little bit because you're like, oh, that's kind of funny, you know, like, fucked up wedding, like, oh, women, weddings, and all this kind of stuff. Like, you watch so many movies like that. And so, like, you're watching the scene, and it's kind of funny, and then, like, it gets more fucked up because they actually are carrying it through. If they weren't carrying it through, then, like, you know, I think it would have worked better. Like, okay, you know, let's have it another day or something like that.
Right.
Or had a scene where she, like, breaks down and starts crying, or, you know, something to, like, you know, at least acknowledge how fucked up these situations are at any point in the movie.
Right, like, at least the dad even pointed out that it was fucked up that she was in that situation, and then he did nothing about it. Like, I thought he was gonna call off the wedding and be, like, the responsible party, but no.
Yeah, oh,
and they just, like, let her humiliate herself in public. And it's also really different from the party scene, because at least in the party scene, everyone is fucked up. So you kind of have that argument of, like, well, they're fucked up, and no one's really in a position to help each other. But at the wedding, everyone is completely sober and fine and allowing this to happen in front of them. Everyone.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be cute.
I am a little shocked about this movie, just based on its reception. Just because, like, you know, we both on this channel have, like, criticized media critic Anita Sarkeesian several times about, like, you know, complaining about, oh, you know, this and sexism and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I gotta say with this movie, like, why the fuck aren't people talking about this movie as much as, like, other fucking movies? Because, like, clearly the fact that they try to make everything cute in this movie makes it way more disturbing than, like, if you just kind of showed it as is and didn't try to, like, play it up like, oh, look at this, you know, fucked up moment, and, like, we're going to kind of handle it.
Right. And it doesn't help that the movie doesn't have anything, like, there's very little that's actually redeemable about it. There's, like, a tiny there are small, maybe 10-second segments that are actually humorous throughout, and then you have the relationship with Molly Ringwald and her dad that I do genuinely really like. But to be fair, we have Say Anything, so we don't really need 16 Candles for that. It's just refreshing to see a teenage girl have a healthy relationship with her dad. But it's not like Molly Ringwald is an interesting character, a redeemable character, or has anything likable about her at all, ever in the entire movie. It's not like you actually have people who have, you know, their human flaws, but you can see through who they really are and, like, appreciate them for their humanity. Everyone's just a total dick. And the whole movie is just dicks fucking people in their assholes. And then it goes around in a fucking circle jerk until the movie is over. And you're like, seriously? He got her cake when everyone else forgot. So that makes it all okay.
And I think it's important to illustrate that there are some movies that do perpetuate the idea of toxic masculinity, and this is definitely one of those.
Oh yeah, you can draw a direct line from this movie to the Steubenville case.
Yeah, which I am surprised they haven't made a movie to the Steubenville case yet. I think it would...
I'm glad that they're not, because that, you know, that's a real woman who's still alive and dealing with this all the time. She doesn't need the worst part of her life displayed for everyone to see in, like, a fictionalized manner.
Well,
that's fucked up.
I would say that probably the best way to handle that case is to not make it about the Steubenville case, but make it a Steubenville-like situation.
Right.
We kind of thought that that was going to happen with the show 13 Reasons Why, which I'm so sorry. We're still working on this podcast about it. It's just, I've been... I took a break from writing about it. I have several pages that I've written. It's just something that I'm trying to tackle appropriately because I feel that the show failed to do that.
Right. But, like, getting back to 16 Candles, there are certain movies where you kind of have to look at them through the lens of the time period. Like, things that are upsetting and offensive now were actually progressive at their time. And that's why I think it's important to not change or censor, movies. It's, any form of media, because we need to be able to look back on it and be like, this is what the standard was, and see that, it's not okay. And we can't, keep perpetuating that. Looking at this and knowing when it came out, who the fuck greenlit this and agreed to be in it and make it and publish it and give it a PG rating, and then everyone saw it and thought it was great? That just boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing about this movie is I was watching it and I was just going what's this movie rated? Oh, it's PG-13 or R or something like that.
It has since been rated R, but when it came out it was PG-13 or PG, sorry.
Well, back then, when it came out, there was no such thing as a PG-13 rating.
Exactly. So it was either PG or R, but, you had nudity, you had cursing, you had date rape, you had, adult themes, whatever. And like I said, it has since been rated R, not PG-13.
Yeah, so...
I don't put a lot of stock in ratings either way. It's just, who greenlit this? Who thought, any of this was okay? John Hughes. But, come on.
Yeah.
I think it gets so much praise for being, compassionate towards its subjects and being, a really realistic take on teens and having real understanding and... Ew, no! This is just one of those movies that offends everybody who isn't a rich white girl. Well, honestly, it's actually even offensive to rich white girls because it shows them that, the best thing you can expect is to be victimized and at least enjoy it when it happens.
Yeah, and, I remember when I was talking about The Geek, early on, and I was just wow, this is, kind of, fucked up, and you were you have no idea, and yeah. I had heard bits and pieces about, the movie and its stuff, but... I don't know, I've seen, really fucked up movies, but...
They're usually fucked up on purpose.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
I'm sorry, I'm a broken record, because I just watched this movie for the first time, so this is sort of a candid response from me. Just, wow. Awkward. That's what I could say about the movie. It's incredibly awkward.
Yeah, I'm not going to go so far as to say, the one good thing about 16 Candles is it's a good talking piece now. To be hey, look at this. Don't do this. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy either. Definitely don't be that chick. Definitely don't be anyone in that family. Just don't be like anybody in this movie. Just here, these are all the ways to be an asshole. Just don't do anything that anyone does in this movie.
Yeah, I do want to get into Molly Ringwald's character just for a minute because, she constantly puts her character is such a girl, but, she constantly blames herself for stuff that, isn't her fault. When Anthony Michael Hall is, sexually harassing her in that car scene that's supposed to be cute, trying to have, a heart-to-heart talk, and Anthony Michael Hall is trying to push it further and further and further. And at first, while I'm watching the scene, I'm hey, this is kind of cute. It's kind of fucked up, but, they're kids and, they don't really fully understand how to handle these situations. And, that's a good talking point to have. But he keeps pushing. And Molly Ringwald in this situation now, granted, she has agency to do whatever she wants, but she clearly states that she's not comfortable. But at the same time, you know, she's trying to console him because she doesn't want to hurt his feelings. And this is something that, at least with women I've talked to, is kind of their reaction. So I think this also puts a negative point on women because, you know, they wind up watching these movies and like thinking these things, which is not to say that, you know, people don't have their own agency, but sometimes pop culture reinforces these types of ideas.
Right, like when you're in a situation like that where you specifically tell the person next to you who keeps touching you in ways that you don't want to be touched and saying things to you that you don't want to have said to you, and you tell them in no uncertain terms, I don't want that, you are free to leave. You don't have to give a shit about how they feel about it. But it does reinforce this thing because the movie tries to make the geek like a really sympathetic, cute character. So like it's reinforcing this idea that, oh, you know, the person who's sexually assaulting you and sexually harassing you constantly, even though you tell them that you're not interested and you don't want that kind of attention at all, maybe they have a good side to them. Maybe they're like really redeemable. Maybe you should like pay attention and try to understand that, you know, they just like you. Maybe you should be flattered by the fact that they just want to be with you because they just think that you're so great. Newsflash, even though the movie keeps saying like, oh, he only has eyes for her, he would fuck anything with tits. And he would treat any woman the same way, clearly, as you see in the movie. And that's usually what it's like with assholes like that. You know, a lot of women will be treated like that and be told like, oh, you should be flattered that someone thinks you're cute. No, any person who does something like that will turn around and do it to the next 5 people that they see.
Yeah, and I think it's important to address these problems because...
as problems, not as cute or just life.
Yeah, this is how we as a society move forward. And I'm not saying that you can't watch this movie and appreciate it for it at the time, you know, even though I am curious to know, for the people who do like this movie, why?
Yeah.
I'm usually very permissive of movies, but like this was definitely one where I just kind of drew the line. It was just like it really rubbed me off the wrong way.
Is there a right way to be rubbed off by this movie, though?
Unless anybody consents to it.
Yeah, we were not given a lot of that in the movie.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not as though the movie was abusing men and women equally. Like, yeah, you had the one Asian dude get fucked around with a little bit because that's funny. But that's about it. It was just dudes being rewarded for being assholes to women.
Yeah.
Like, nothing that happened to the geek is comparable to anything that happened to a woman. Any of them.
Right. So, what do you guys think of 16 Candles? I really, really, really would like to hear an argument against ours, or, you know, a different take or something like that. This movie shocked and disturbed me, and maybe there is some redeeming point of the movie that I'm not looking at. Leave your comments below, and thanks for listening.